Someone once said confidence is key, but nobody mentioned it could also unlock a disaster. Today, we have 29 people who found out the hard way. Moment 1. Someone decided the best way to unclog their kitchen drain was to pour an entire gallon of bleach down it, followed immediately by an entire bottle of ammonia. Because two cleaners are better than one. They had, in their own words, doubled the cleaning power. What they had actually done was create chloramine gas inside their own home, a toxic compound with a rich history of being used in chemical warfare. The sink, by the way, was still clogged. The drain did not care. Physics has no loyalty to optimism. Moment 2. A man decided to save money on his electric bill by rewiring his own fuse box. No training, no license. Just a YouTube video from 2009 and what he described as pretty good instincts. The result was a fuse box that technically worked for about 11 days, before tripping every breaker in the house simultaneously and leaving his family without power for a weekend. An electrician later described the wiring as a cry for help. The money he saved on the electric bill was roughly 1/6 of what he paid the electrician to fix it. Moment 3. A woman posted online genuinely upset that her houseplants kept dying despite the fact that she watered them every single day without fail. Every single day. The comments tried gently to explain that overwatering is the #1 killer of houseplants and that roots need air as much as they need moisture. She replied that that couldn't be right because water is natural. So is drowning, but we don't recommend it as a lifestyle. Moment 4. A group of friends decided to cut costs on a camping trip by skipping bare canisters and instead storing all their food, every snack, every meal, every piece of beef jerky, inside the tent with them while they slept. Because, and this is a quote, "Bears probably don't come this close to the parking lot." They were at Yosemite. A bear found their tent at 2 in the morning. No one was seriously hurt, but the cooler did not survive, and neither did whatever dignity was left after running screaming into the night in matching pajamas. Moment 5. Someone attempted to jumpstart their car battery using a different car. Perfectly reasonable, except they connected the cables backwards. Positive to negative, negative to positive. The result was a small but enthusiastic electrical fire that damaged both vehicles. When asked why they'd connected them backwards, they said they thought it looked more symmetrical. Symmetry, they sacrificed two functioning automobiles on the altar of aesthetics. Moment 6. A homeowner decided to speed up the drying process of their freshly painted living room by closing all the windows, cranking the heat to 85 degrees, and pointing 3 space heaters directly at the walls. The paint bubbled, all of it. The walls looked like the surface of a distant planet. The painter they eventually hired took one look and asked slowly, "Who did this to you?" The homeowner didn't have the courage to answer honestly. Moment 7. Be honest, have you ever met someone who microwaved a styrofoam container because they didn't have time to find a real plate? Now imagine doing that, watching it begin to melt, and then deciding that it was probably fine and eating the food anyway. This person then reported feeling a little weird afterward and wondered if they were coming down with something. They were not coming down with something. They ate melted plastic. The body has a very clear opinion about that. Moment 8. A man trying to impress a date decided to make homemade sushi despite having never once made sushi, having never worked with raw fish, and having purchased said fish from a gas station. Not a grocery store attached to a gas station. A gas station. The date was not impressed. The emergency room staff were, however, very professional about the whole thing. Moment 9. It somehow gets worse. A woman decided to dye her hair at home to save money, which is perfectly reasonable, except she left the dye on for 3 times longer than the instructions recommended because she wanted a deeper color. She got a deeper color. She also got chemical burns along her hairline and hair that snapped off at the root when she tried to brush it. The box very clearly said 30 minutes. The word clearly is doing heavy lifting in that sentence when applied to someone who looked at 30 minutes and thought 90 sounds more thorough. Moment 10. A man set up a brand new flat-screen television by himself, feeling rightfully confident, and then realized he had no way to mount it on the wall. Rather than purchasing a proper wall mount, a device that exists specifically for this purpose and costs less than dinner, he balanced the television on 2 stuffed textbooks, secured with a single bungee cord, and called it engineering. The television lasted 4 days before the bungee cord decided to seek new opportunities, and the television introduced itself to the floor at speed. Moment 11. Someone convinced themselves that feeding a wild raccoon on their back porch every night was harmless because the raccoon was friendly. Raccoons are many things. Friendly is a complicated word when applied to an animal that views your home as a potential buffet and your trash cans as a business investment. By month 3, there were 7 raccoons. By month 4, they had developed what could only be described as a schedule. The homeowner eventually had to hire a wildlife removal company. The raccoons, for their part, seemed personally offended. Moment 12. A person decided to save time by combining 2 trips into one and attempted to carry all of their groceries from the car to the house in a single load. 17 bags. Both hands, both arms, bags hanging from every finger. Have you ever seen this? The slow shuffling walk, the white-knuckled grip, the sheer refusal to make a second trip. 3 bags split, eggs on the driveway. A jar of pasta sauce made a sound that cannot be described as anything other than final. The second trip would have taken 45 seconds. The cleanup took 20 minutes. Moment 13. This next one defies logic. A man decided to trim his own trees using a chainsaw. Again, reasonable. He decided to do this while standing on the branch he was cutting. The branch, when severed, did not hold him up out of gratitude. Gravity, as it has done reliably for the entire history of the universe, continued to work exactly as advertised. He survived, fortunately, but the tree did not, and neither did the section of fence the branch landed on. His neighbor's garden gnome, however, emerged unscathed, which honestly feels like a message. Moment 14. Someone decided to cook a full Thanksgiving turkey in an air fryer because they'd read that air fryers were faster. Air fryers are faster for things that fit inside an air fryer. A full turkey does not fit inside an air fryer. They tried anyway. What emerged after 2 hours and a smoke alarm evacuation was a turkey that was carbonized on the outside and technically still raw in the center. This is the culinary equivalent of a black hole, an object so thoroughly failed that it bends the rules of what food's supposed to be. Moment 15. A person attempted to fix a squeaky floorboard by pouring an entire bottle of WD-40 between the boards. For those unfamiliar, WD-40 is a water displacer and light lubricant, not a structural flooring solution. The squeak stopped. It was replaced, however, by an oil stain that spread across 4 feet of hardwood and the lingering smell of a mechanic's shop that no amount of candles could defeat. The floor now squeaks in a different spot. Progress, moment 16. A man decided to wash his car in his apartment building's parking garage using a bucket and some dish soap because he didn't want to pay for a car wash. The drain in the garage was not designed for soapy runoff. Water spread. A neighboring resident slipped. The building management sent a letter. The letter contained the phrase, "This cannot happen again," in bold, which is the property management equivalent of a final warning. A car wash costs $9. Moment 17. Be honest, would you try to repair a gas leak yourself using duct tape because someone did? Someone looked at a hissing pipe, assessed the situation with tremendous confidence, and reached for the duct tape. Duct tape, for all its legendary versatility, was not designed for gas line repair. The plumber who arrived later apparently stood in silence for a full 30 seconds just looking at it before saying anything. Sometimes silence is the only appropriate professional response. Moment 18. A woman decided to make her own candles as a side business and, wanting to save costs, used a pot she found at a thrift store without checking what it had previously contained. It had contained paint thinner. The residue, when heated, created fumes that required the evacuation of her apartment building and a response from the fire department. Her Etsy shop launched 3 weeks later with the tagline, "Handcrafted with love." Technically accurate. Also technically almost catastrophic. Moment 19. Someone at a company retreat decided that the best way to build team morale was to organize a friendly go-kart race, aggressively trash-talk their direct reports the entire time, refuse to acknowledge the final results because they came in last, and then submit an expense report for the entire event, including personal snacks and a racing helmet they bought and kept. The helmet did not make them faster. It made them look like they were trying harder, which somehow made losing worse. Management reviewed the expense report twice, very slowly. Moment 20, and somehow we're still warming up. A man decided to power wash his own driveway, which is perfectly fine, except he then decided to power wash the inside of his garage, then the walls of his house, then, for reasons that remain unclear to everyone including himself, his car interior. A power washer delivers water at roughly 2,000 pounds per square inch. His car seats retained moisture for 11 days. The smell that developed is a story in itself. Moment 21. A person planted bamboo in their backyard because they wanted natural privacy screening. Bamboo, specifically the running variety they chose, spreads underground through rhizomes and does not stop at property lines, fences, or the quiet wishes of homeowners. Within 2 seasons, bamboo had appeared in the neighbor's yard, the neighbor's other neighbor's yard, through the foundation of a small garden shed, and somehow inside the fence of a public park 2 lots away. Bamboo does not negotiate. Bamboo simply expands. They are still dealing with it. Moment 22. A woman decided to solve a pest problem by adopting a cat specifically for outdoor mousing. This plan worked brilliantly. The cat was an exceptional hunter. The cat also hunted birds, chipmunks, one particularly unfortunate rabbit, and developed the habit of leaving trophies on the front step at 5 in the morning. When neighbors complained about the outdoor cat, she was baffled. She had solved a mouse problem. She did not consider that she had simply introduced a different and far more confident problem with better PR. Moment 23. Someone decided to skip reading the terms and conditions on a free app they downloaded for their small business, check no boxes, grant all permissions, and then connect it to their work email, their calendar, their business contacts, and their payment processing account. The app was from a developer with 17 followers, no website, and a name that translated loosely from another language to data harvest. The IT consultant they eventually hired described it as a masterclass in digital trust falls. The class was not graded kindly. Moment 24. A man decided to build a backyard fire pit without checking local ordinances because it's my yard. It was not fully his yard in the legal sense that matters for open flame ordinances, HOA agreements, and municipal fire codes. The first use of the fire pit resulted in a visit from both the fire department and his HOA, a fine from the city, and a strongly worded letter from 3 neighbors. He had to have it removed. The whole project cost him roughly $400. A legal, compliant fire pit would have cost $60. Defiance is expensive. Moment 25. Now we enter a different category entirely. A woman called a customer service line for a streaming service. A streaming service to complain that the sunset outside her window had been too bright and too long during the previous evening, and wanted to know what the service intended to do about it. She was watching a nature documentary at the time and had apparently become confused about which things the company controlled. The representative handled it with extraordinary professionalism. Somewhere, that representative deserves a medal. Moment 26. A man attempted to sue a weather forecasting company because the forecast predicted a 70% chance of sunshine and it rained. He argued that 70% meant the company had promised sunshine. 70% means 30% chance of the other thing. It says this directly. It says it with the number. He felt the number was misleading. He wanted compensation for a ruined picnic. The judge did not agree. Statistics have not issued a comment. Moment 27. Someone submitted a formal noise complaint to their city council about birds. Not birds in a specific location. Not a specific species causing a documented disturbance. Birds in general. The ambient bird sounds that occur outside in nature, in the morning, as birds done since before recorded history. They requested that something be done. The city council member who received the complaint apparently read it aloud to staff. Not maliciously, they were simply trying to confirm that it was real. It was real. The birds were not notified of the complaint and have not altered their behavior. Moment 28. A man wrote a 1-star review for a national park. He gave it 1 star because there was no Wi-Fi. He acknowledged in the review that the hiking was beautiful, the wildlife was incredible, the views were literally breathtaking, and the staff were helpful. 1 star. No Wi-Fi. A national park, preserved across decades of conservation work, maintained by rangers across thousands of acres of wilderness, existing specifically as a space removed from the noise of modern life. 1 star because he couldn't get a signal. He then posted the review from a parking lot where he'd found half a bar of service, which is not the irony he thought it was. Moment 29. And here we are, the final entry. The one that resets the scale. A person, calm, apparently functional, living in society, called the corporate office of a major grocery chain to complain that the store did not carry a specific product, demanded to know why, received an explanation that the product had been discontinued by its manufacturer and was therefore impossible for any store to carry, refused to accept that answer, escalated through 3 levels of management, and eventually sent a formal written letter demanding the grocery chain make them make it again. The grocery chain does not manufacture products. The manufacturer had ceased production. This person believed that the complaints department of a supermarket had the authority to reverse corporate production decisions at an unrelated company on their behalf. This is peak. This is the summit. Everything before this was preparation. Somewhere in each of these 29 moments, there is the same root cause. Not stupidity, exactly, but something closer to a complete and unearned confidence in one's own logic that makes questioning unnecessary. The world becomes a place that should be working harder to accommodate whatever seemed right in the moment. And the gap between that expectation and actual reality is not just funny, it's genuinely illuminating. Because every single one of these people thought they were being smart. That's the part that should haunt you a little. So here's the question I'll leave you with. Which one of these 29 do you think is the most spectacularly, magnificently, historically misguided? Drop your ranking in the comments. I genuinely want to know where people draw the line between understandable mistake and this person should not be allowed near anything that can be broken. If this video made you feel measurably more competent by comparison, which is honestly its highest achievement, hit like, subscribe, and come back next time when we'll find an entirely new collection of moments that will make today's look like responsible decision making.